Why did your grandpa pay 5 cents for a Coke, but you pay $2? No, he didn't have a secret discount code. The answer is a silent, invisible force that's been shaping economies for thousands of years: inflation. It's the reason your money buys less today than it did yesterday. But where did this sneaky concept come from? Was there a time before inflation? Let's dive into the fascinating and sometimes wild history of how your money loses its value. Our story begins in ancient Rome. Imagine you're a Roman soldier. You get paid in shiny silver coins called denarii. For a while, life is good. These coins are made of almost pure silver, but then the emperors get a little greedy. They need more money to fund wars, build monuments, and throw lavish parties. Instead of raising taxes and making people angry, they find a clever trick. They start mixing cheaper metals like copper into the silver coins, so they can mint more coins from the same amount of silver. At first, nobody really notices. A denarius is a denarius, right? But soon there are a lot more of these debased coins floating around. Merchants, not being fools, start realizing that the new coins aren't as valuable as the old ones. What do? They raise their prices. If a loaf of bread cost 1 denarius before, now it might cost 2. Sound familiar? That, my friends, was one of the earliest recorded instances of government-induced inflation. By the 3rd century, the denarius was almost entirely bronze with a thin silver coating. The Roman economy was in chaos, and this rampant inflation was a major factor in the eventual decline of the Western Roman Empire. Fast forward 1,000 years to medieval China. During the Song dynasty, they invented something revolutionary: paper money. It was called jiaozi. This was brilliant. Instead of lugging around heavy bags of coins, you could carry lightweight paper notes. It was convenient, it boosted trade, and it was a massive success. For a while, the government initially promised that you could always exchange your paper notes for an equivalent value in coins. But then history repeated itself. When the government needed money, especially during the wars with the Mongols, they just fired up the printing presses. More and more paper money flooded the market with no extra goods or services to back it up. People quickly lost faith in the paper currency. Its value plummeted. Imagine having a wallet full of cash that becomes virtually worthless overnight. This cycle of overprinting and collapse happened several times in Chinese history, a powerful lesson about the dangers of creating money out of thin air. Now let's jump to Europe in the 16th century, the age of exploration. Spanish conquistadors discovered vast amounts of gold and silver in the Americas. Shiploads of treasure were sent back to Spain. You'd think this would make Spain incredibly rich and powerful, and for a time it did. But all that new gold and silver had an unexpected side effect. It dramatically increased the money supply across Europe. With so much more gold and silver circulating, the value of each individual coin went down. The result was a century-long period of inflation known as the price revolution. Prices for everyday goods like grain and cloth soared, in some places by as much as 600%. While nobles and merchants with assets did well, ordinary workers and peasants whose wages didn't keep up suffered greatly. It was a stark reminder that even real money like gold and silver isn't immune to the laws of supply and demand. Too much of it, and its value will fall. The 20th century, however, is where the story of inflation gets truly extreme. After World War I, Germany was crippled by war reparations demanded by the victors. The government's solution? Print money, and print, and print. What followed was one of the most infamous cases of hyperinflation in history. In 1921, $1 was worth about 60 German marks. By November 1923, $1 was worth 4.2 trillion marks. The numbers are just mind-boggling. Prices were doubling every few days. People were paid twice a day and would rush to the stores to spend their wages before they became worthless. Workers would carry their pay in wheelbarrows. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January 1923 cost 200 billion marks by November. People used stacks of cash as firewood because it was cheaper than buying actual wood. This economic catastrophe wiped out the savings of the middle class and created immense social and political instability, paving the way for extremist ideologies to take hold. So why does inflation happen? As we've seen, a major cause is an increase in the money supply. When a government prints too much money to pay its debts, you get inflation. This is often called demand-pull inflation. More money chasing the same amount of goods and services pushes prices up. Another type is cost-push inflation. This happens when the cost of producing goods and services goes up. For example, if a natural disaster disrupts the supply of oil, the price of gasoline shoots up. Since nearly everything we buy needs to be transported, this increase in fuel costs gets passed on to the consumer in the form of higher prices for all sorts of products. Think of it as a domino effect. But wait, is all inflation bad? Not necessarily. Most economists today believe that a small, steady amount of inflation, around 2% per year, is actually healthy for an economy. It encourages people to spend and invest their money rather than hoarding it under a mattress, which keeps the economy moving. It also makes it easier for wages and prices to adjust. The real danger lies in high, unpredictable inflation, or its opposite, deflation, where prices fall, people delay spending, and the economy grinds to a halt. So how do governments and central banks like the Federal Reserve in the US try to control this? Their main tool is adjusting interest rates. When they want to cool down inflation, they raise interest rates. This makes it more expensive for people and businesses to borrow money, which slows down spending and cools the economy. When they want to stimulate the economy, they lower interest rates, encouraging borrowing and spending. It's a delicate balancing act, like trying to fly a kite in a tricky wind. From Roman emperors shaving their coins to modern central bankers tinkering with interest rates, the struggle to maintain the value of money is a constant throughout human history. Inflation is a complex force shaped by war, technology, politics, and even human psychology. It's the silent tax, the reason your savings shrink, and the hidden engine that can either fuel economic growth or drive it off a cliff. The next time you grumble about the price of a coffee or a gallon of gas, remember you're part of a story that's thousands of years old. You're living through another chapter in the epic history of inflation. It's a story that affects every single one of us, every single day. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through economic history interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world around us. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to learn about next. See you in the next video.